Did you know that 95% of weight loss resistance is from hormone imbalances? Could hormone imbalance be stopping you from losing weight? Probably. Find out by heading over to KarenMartell.com and take my free online hormone quiz to help you uncover what hormones could be contributing to your ability to lose weight and exactly what you can do about it. That's KarenMartell.com. You're listening to The Other Side of Weight Loss. I'm your host, Karen Martell, transformational nutrition coach and expert in women's weight loss and hormone health. If you are ready to go beyond diet and exercise, then tune in each week to hear from leading experts in psychology, nutrition, and spirituality as we explore the many avenues of what it really takes to lose weight and feel your best. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. We've got a good one for you today because we are talking all things vagina, which we do not talk about enough. And I'm not going to call it the vajayjay or the better, whatever people call it these days. I don't know. Let's just call it a vagina. Let's call it what it is. My guest today is Kim Vopni, and she is a self-professed pelvic health evangelist and is known as the Vagina Coach. She is a certified fitness professional who became passionate about spreading information on pelvic health when she was pregnant with her first child. She is a published author, a passionate speaker, and women's health educator as well as a mom of two boys. Kim is the founder of Pelvine Wellness Incorporated, a company offering pelvic health programs and coaching for women in pregnancy, motherhood, and menopause. She is also the co-founder of Bellies Incorporated. You can find her online at vaginacoach.com. So welcome, Kim. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
Yeah, and we just talked about the fact that Kim is literally a couple of hours away from me, and I had no idea. So that's nice. She is a fellow Canadian, British Columbian, and that makes me super happy because, like I told you, Kim, I don't get a lot of Canadians on the show, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, and I haven't been on a lot of podcasts. One recently that was Toronto, but no, not a lot of BC. So go BC.
Yeah, go BC podcasters. So Kim, why are you the Vagina Coach? Let's hear the story behind this one. Because you were pregnant when you decided to be, because usually you would think it would be post-pregnancy, you're peeing your pants at this point.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to become the Vagina Coach. But for you, it started while you were pregnant.
Yeah, it actually even started before then. So I remember growing up with this fascination of pregnancy and birth. And I remember seeing a video in my 6th grade sex ed class that sort of scared me a whole heck of a lot. But I started asking questions and asked my mom, and I knew that she had gone through that. And my mom was a nurse, so she was very open and shared everything in great detail. And so she told me about her births and that she had something called an episiotomy, where they cut the tissues in the perineum, and that put more fear into me. And so I sort of grew up with this thinking that I was just not going to do that. I'm not going to have children. That's not for me. And knowing later that my mom eventually had surgery for her incontinence. And so that just kind of further affirmed for me that it just wasn't something that I was interested in doing. And then I grew up, obviously I got married, and the year before I was pregnant, I watched my sister-in-law give birth, and she used midwives. And at the time, all I really had to go on was what I had seen in the media and that grade 6 sex ed video.
Yes. So, I'm sure it was super educational.
Yeah, it was like a horror movie, but so it really opened my eyes to what normal physiological birth was, and midwife attended birth. And it was still in a hospital, but it was very, very different. And it really empowered me. And I remember asking my sister-in-law a lot of questions about what she had done. And my husband and I did want to start a family. So the next year I was pregnant, I talked to my midwives about all the things that I could do. And one of the things they had mentioned was this product called the Epino. So I knew about perineal massage, and they had told me about this product called the Epino, and I researched that. And it's a biofeedback device that essentially helps train the pelvic floor for birth. And it helps women be able to see when they contract and relax their pelvic floor. And it also plays a role in introducing sensations of stretch and pressure and discomfort, so women know how to respond appropriately to those, because that's what they're going to be experiencing when they're giving birth, obviously to a greater degree when they're giving birth. But so I used this product. I had a great experience. A lot of my friends weren't super happy with their birth experiences, and I said, I think this played a role in me having the birth that I did. And I contacted the company and said, hey, I'd like to tell more people about this. Could I be a distributor? And that was not intended to be a business. I just thought I'll sell a few of these on the side and help some people out. And that, now 15 years later, that's kind of what started it all. And the Vagina Coach part came actually I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. I was speaking to a group of mom entrepreneurs, and my topic was how optimizing your pelvic health can make you a better mompreneur. And it was at a 2-day conference, and the speakers were, marketing people and business coaches and all this type of thing. And when I got up on stage, I said, okay, now you have a vagina coach for your business. And it kind of just came out of my mouth, and a light bulb went off, and I said, that's really sums up what it is that I do. And that it's not just because up until then I had really focused on the pregnancy side of things. And then recognizing that it wasn't just pregnant women that I was dealing with anymore, I felt like I needed to kind of broaden that scope. So the Vagina Coach piece just struck a chord, and that's how
it was
all
meant
happened.
to be.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be that you were the Vagina Coach. Yeah. And so let's just back that up a little bit, because I think this is where it all begins for so many women. So a lot of my audience, they've had their kids, they're usually in their 40s to 50s, but it usually starts, the whole pelvic floor issues, bladder issues start back when we have our children. And I had certified myself as a doula, and I remember that was a very long time ago, before I had kids. And I remember them teaching us that how doctors, when you're delivering your baby, and how they tell you to push, and how to push like you're going to the bathroom, like you got to go poop, and push that down into your bowels, and how that pushing there is wrong, and that's what causes a lot of the issues, because that's not how we should be pushing, and it's putting pressure on our bladders, or I can't remember, but it wrecks gives you the bladder incontinence and stuff after birth. Is that true? Something like that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess birth definitely. So pregnancy in and of itself can contribute to development of symptoms like leaking and that type of thing. The pushing phase of labor is right now, if you do have a doctor assisted birth, if you're in a hospital, then most commonly you will be in a lithotomy position when you're on your back and your knees are kind of up by your ears. And the coaching that usually happens, unless you have a doula present, usually the coaching is around waiting for a contraction and then holding your breath and bearing down. And that creates a lot of pressure on your abdominal wall, on your pelvic floor. And when we exhale, our pelvic floor actually contracts. So a normal physiological response while we're breathing, the inhalations are when the pelvic floor is lengthening. And when we exhale, the pelvic floor is contracting and lifting. And it sort of goes through a dance with the diaphragm all day long. And when you think about that from a birth perspective, when we're exhaling, knowing the pelvic floor is contracting, and if we're then also holding our breath and creating increases in intra-abdominal pressure, that's a lot of pressure downwards. So it certainly can be a big contributor to the development of pelvic floor challenges. Also prolapse, organ prolapse, when the organs start to shift out of their optimal alignment. So I don't want to bash the medical community by any means, but it would be, they're trained in when things go wrong, and they're not necessarily trained, and many of them haven't even witnessed a normal physiological birth. So I love midwives, I love doulas, and home or hospital, wherever you feel safest. But I think if women knew beforehand, so while they're pregnant or even before they're pregnant, about all the physiological changes that happen to the body, all the biomechanical adaptations that happen that can influence the pelvic floor, the awareness that they have then allows them to make choices from a movement perspective, from a posture perspective, all kind of proactively while they're still pregnant. And then they also, when they understand the physiological birth, what happens in birth and what should be happening, then they can also make choices with regards to the positions that they choose. And lithotomy really is one of the least effective positions. And can, there's a lot more we can do that actually opens up the outlet, allows the pelvic floor to relax. And then if you're coached properly from a breathing perspective, it can limit the amount of pressure and potential for tearing and all that kind of stuff. So it really is about education and awareness. And unfortunately, most people find out about it after the fact. Yeah. And the most common thing I hear is, I wish I had known about this beforehand.
Yeah.
And, but one of the things I also always say is it's never too late. So yes, that's what you knew at the time. Now you know more and you know different, and now you can make different choices.
Yeah. Cause I think that most women, like I was just with my sister the other day, and she's just like prime example. She had 3 births, like horrific labors for, 30 hours plus with all of them, no drugs, no midwife, just a doctor. Luckily her sister was a doula, so I was there. But she still, this is now 14 years later, she still is like going pee every hour on the hour. She's like, oh, don't make me laugh, I'll pee my pants. And you hear that from so many women. And she's looked at doing the surgery, the bladder lift, and she's like, it looks like it's not safe or it doesn't work. And she's just embraced the fact that this is it for the rest of her life. And so when you say it's never too late, is it not too late? Are you meaning people like her even? It's not too late?
No, not too late. Absolutely not. So there's 2 things that you said there. One, and also very common, and people associate it with the same thing. So I feel like I have to go all the time, or I leak when I laugh. So don't make me do either of those things. And there's different types of incontinence. So incontinence is when urine is coming out of you when you don't want it to. And there's urge incontinence, where you feel like, I got to go. And sometimes you feel like you can't make it to the bathroom in time. And so what can happen, that can sometimes be nerve related. So if there was any pressure or, pressure on the nerves, or if there was any tearing or cutting into the nerves, that can play a role in it. But what then happens is it starts to change behaviors as well. So people then say, well, I don't want to get that urge, I'm going to a meeting, or I'm going into an exercise class, or so I'm just going to go more often. And then it starts to train your bladder to signal you more often. So you start to get that signaling more regularly. It should be every 2.5 to 4 hours when you empty your bladder. And as you say, some people go every half an hour, every hour, and they feel like it starts to take over their life. And then the stress urinary incontinence, so that's when the people who leak when they laugh or cough or sneeze or jump, or whenever some sort of force has happened that the sphincters can't manage, then the tactic also is, well, I'm just going to pee just in case so that I don't leak. And that starts to set up the other side of things. But the incontinence as a result of the exertion, that oftentimes is retraining the core system, retraining the pelvic floor to respond appropriately. A lot of it's to do with breath and to do with posture, and getting the timing of the muscle contraction, get it stronger, get it timed better.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the timing that's off. And stronger doesn't always mean that you need it to squeeze more or lift more. It can sometimes mean strength is found in the learning to relax those muscles, because some people have muscles that are non-relaxing or they're overactive. And a strong muscle is one that can contract and relax appropriately through its full range of motion. A strong muscle isn't a short, tight muscle that's held in that position all the time. Does that make sense?
I think so. Do you mean like the bladder muscle? Like what's contracting your bladder to go pee, or are we talking like pelvic floor?
Pelvic floor muscles.
Pelvic
Yes.
floor muscles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So strengthening or relaxing the pelvic floor can help with incontinence.
Absolutely. So all of my programs always have a balance between the two, because
Wow.
we ultimately we need muscles that work through their full range of motion. And some people
Hmm.
need to focus more on the relaxation. Some people need to focus more on the contract and the lift. And the lift part is also a piece of Kegels that is missing by many. So studies show that over 50% of women are doing Kegels incorrectly. And
Wow.
Kegels are often prescribed, but they're very rarely taught. And so women are told to do Kegels, but it's kind of this elusive exercise that no one really totally knows how to do them. And no one's really ever evaluated them. So they don't know, is my floor, do I need to focus more on the relaxation or on the lifting? Or some people think that they just need to squeeze their vagina, and they end up squeezing their inner thighs or their glutes and not actually working the pelvic floor. So then people think that Kegels don't work.
Right. And is there different levels of Kegels? Like, so that there's like you can,
Olympic level and
gold, silver, bronze. Is there different levels that we could be striving for here, Kim? Like I think I remember this from a long time ago, like that you can, like, there's ground level
yep.
Kegel, and then you can basically work your way up the vaginal walls, squeezing them up higher.
Yeah, so there's different approaches, and there's different sites of activation, if you want to call it. There's different
Mm-hmm.
cues that help people. So at the end of the day, it's whatever you need to visualize or think about to elicit the response of the appropriate contraction and relaxation. So some people might think of, as you kind of described there, almost like an elevator, where
Yeah.
you start at the ground floor and then you go to first, second, and do you have the control to be able to stop at the first level and then maybe go up to the third and then down to the second again and back up. So that's one way. And that's certainly, it can be an effective way of training for many. Other people don't resonate with an elevator, so they would want to think of something different. Some people need to almost like visualize that there's something physically there, like a tampon or a diva cup or a finger or a penis or something.
Mm-hmm.
Other people, that's not at all what they want to think about. They need something more like a jellyfish swimming, or like I had one client who liked the image of a net. She would cast her net and then she would gather her net. So it's all relative to what resonates with that person, and what in their body, what visualization allows them to do the appropriate contraction and relaxation. So in terms of levels, there's not necessarily, you are now ready for Olympic level Kegels.
Yeah.
And that's another, I think, misnomer, is people think that they need to be able to, there's a very prominent woman who displays images of herself with things like surfboards and chandeliers. So she puts an egg in her vagina with a string attached, and then attaches other things to it to show the strength.
She's Olympic level, Kim.
Well, that's debatable. So
Yeah, that's scary.
you see things like that, and then you think, oh my gosh, I don't think I can hold a surfboard with my vagina. So I must not be very strong. But the pelvic floor is different than that. It's more of it's working all day long. It's contributing to a lot of different functions throughout the day. And we don't need it to be able to lift a surfboard. And when you put something into your vagina and then you have to squeeze and hold it in what's considered an isometric contraction, so there's no movement happening, it's just a squeeze and hold tight, that's also, again, not taking the muscle through its range of motion with the contract and relax. And so it's not the most functional approach to training. And I disagree. You don't need to lift a surfboard. That doesn't mean that you have a strong Olympic level vagina. And in fact, when I teach, one of the cues that resonates, I'd say is probably the most popular cue with people, is a blueberry. So just imagine picking up a blueberry with your vagina and your anus on your exhalation. And then when you inhale, put the blueberry back down as a whole blueberry. You don't make juice out of it. You just pick it up and you put it back down.
Of course, everyone that's listening is doing that right now. They're all like, oh, there's the blueberry, and we let it go.
Yeah. But then there's other people who are like, I hate blueberries, so they don't want to think about it. So,
What I think is like, ooh, you'd just be afraid of it getting lost up there. Where'd it
Yeah.
go? If you don't know your anatomy very well.
Totally.
I just think the poor woman's husband if she can lift up a chandelier, man, she could clamp down and that'd be it. You're not going nowhere.
Yeah.
Do you ever use the jade eggs or anything like, for
No.
those listening, these are things that you can insert into your vagina and basically walk around with it in, trying to keep it in there as a form of contracting and strengthening the pelvic floor. So you don't use those, hey?
No. And so if you can imagine, I wouldn't send somebody to the gym and say, pick up a 10-pound dumbbell and curl, like do a dumbbell curl, and then walk around the gym 5 times, maybe even for 20 minutes, but don't just hold your arm there. That's not how we work. That's not how our muscles work. We don't just statically hold things. Well, I shouldn't say that. Yes, we do sometimes, but that's not that was not going to train us for strength. That's not going to make me have stronger biceps and arms if I just hold on to a dumbbell while I walk around all day. It'll fatigue it. It'll get really sore, and it'll start to adapt to a really short, tight state. And then I won't eventually be able to lengthen my arm anymore. So that same thing can happen in the pelvic floor. And I don't want to say that I'm completely against devices. But what I always say is invest money first in seeing a pelvic floor physiotherapist and have them help you decide if a device like a yoni egg or a jade egg, or there's biofeedback devices. There's one called the LV, which I actually do like. Allow them to help you decide if that's something that's worth investing in for you, for your floor. Some people do benefit from something in there because it gives them some feedback. What I like about the LV is it does have biofeedback, so you can, it registers, a contraction and then a relaxation, and it also can distinguish between people who think they're doing a contraction but are actually bearing down.
And so are you putting something, so when you say biofeedback, can you explain what you mean there?
Yeah, sorry. So it's something that's inserted into the vagina, and it's attached to, many of them are attached to apps now on your phone.
Oh,
and so when you engage or contract your pelvic floor and lift, it will register. So you would be able to see on the screen on your app. Some of them have can you make this frog jump over this toadstool? Like a video game almost. And so I agree with that type of training if it's appropriate for you. So again, I usually say before you invest in that, go see a pelvic floor physiotherapist first, if you have access to one, and then decide. So that's my recommendation on that. The jade egg thing, again, I don't believe in inserting something and walking around or doing things. I don't believe that trains the muscles in a functional way.
It's better just to let the family know I'm off to my bedroom to play mom's video game. We'll talk to you guys later.
Exactly.
Now, many pelvic floor physiotherapists do internal vagina work. Is there a place for that when it comes to incontinence? Does it help? Is that something that you would utilize?
1,000%. Yes.
Oh, good. Great.
So,
okay.
Pelvic floor physios are, in my opinion, the most underused women's health resource that we have. And I remember when I first learned about them, so not long after I started selling the Epino product that I had used, it was back in 2000 I started in 2004, but I kind of made it serious around 2009. And I met with some physios who I hadn't heard of them before, and they were referring to me, and I sat down with them and they told me what they do. And I said, how is it that not every single woman is seeing you every year, just like we see a dentist? How is that not happening? And that kind of became my big mission, was to spread the word about pelvic health physio. And so they are regular physiotherapists who have additional training in the pelvic floor, and they are licensed to go beyond the introitus, so beyond the entrance to the vagina. And they can evaluate they look at the external genitalia, they evaluate the tone in the internal muscles. So they're looking for balance in the tone. They want to know if the muscles can contract and can they relax. They assess the position of the organs. So it's a really, really thorough assessment. It's nothing like a pap smear. And people come out of there with an incredible appreciation for their body and a lot of knowledge. And I think every single woman should see a pelvic floor physiotherapist and make it an annual thing, like you see the dentist, even if you have no symptoms. And there's one stat that shows that pelvic health physio, or pelvic floor muscle training, which a lot of people can learn very well from a pelvic health physio, is 84, I think it's 83 or 84% effective at curing incontinence. And that's not just like helping improve it a little, but curing it so that women don't have it anymore. And it can be very, very, very
liberating
treatable
and very
and liberating. Exactly.
Wow.
So
I'm really glad you said that, Kim. There's not a lot of information about that. About, I would say 10 years ago, I looked at becoming doing internal vagina work for women. Urogenital manipulation was the word used. My training, I used to do body work, but it didn't fall under that. So I wasn't legally allowed to do it. So I couldn't do the training. But I researched it a lot, and there was places down in the States that did it and really helped women with fertility issues, etc. And I personally did it because I had, a history of endometriosis. I've had, 3 laparoscopies. I had 2 cesareans. And so I knew I had a lot of scar tissue in there. And you're right. I was really thinking it was going to be like a pap test. And I was like, oh, this is going to be horrible. And instead, you're covered up. It was so gentle, and the woman was super lovely. She was a physio, and I did 3 sessions, and I'll never forget how painful certain areas were as she released scar tissue, and then how it completely disappeared, the pain. And so she released it, and I remember feeling the heat of that release and just being like, oh. And even one session, and this is maybe a little, too much information.
It's never TMI in my world.
I know, me too. I'm just like, open book, here we go. There's no such thing as TMI. But yeah, and afterwards, so I had this release of tissue and having diarrhea for, an hour afterwards. And I just thought, wow, there goes that's toxins coming out of my system that were built up in this tissue. And it was a great experience, as far as, as great can be when you're having someone manipulate your vagina. But I'm so happy that I did it. And
it's
I wish more
life-changing.
women, I wish more women would do it. And I didn't know that it did help with incontinence.
Yeah, it helps with incontinence. It helps with pain with sex. It can help with, so if you have there's a lot of residual pain from scar tissue from, as you said, you've had cesarean, so cesarean births or any other type of surgeries, from car accidents. So maybe if there's any sort of, if the bones are not sitting well, and maybe one group of muscles is pulling too much, or maybe there's scar tissue that's adhered and preventing the muscles from working. Maybe some of the scar tissue has adhered to one of the organs, like the bladder, or there's so many things, and it is so really, I don't want to say it's not always like, oh, so easy to treat, but it is such an accessible treatment and such a liberating, as you say, there's freedom. And if people can not have pain with sex anymore, that is life-changing. And if people don't have to buy pads and they can laugh and cough and sneeze freely again, that's life-changing. And it also affects relationships, and it affects confidence, and it affects how people move, and body image. It affects so many things. And I can't say enough about pelvic floor physio.
And I think for those two that are listening, thinking there's no chance in hell I'd ever do something like that, there are people too that do what's called visceral manipulation. Many massage therapists do it, but some people are just certified as a visceral manipulation practitioner, and they can access from the outside. I don't know how much that would, you tell me, Kim. I don't know if that would help much with bladder control necessarily, if you're working on the tissue from the outside, like doing pelvic floor, down, which I used to do in my body. And when I did body work, I would just help move things around down there. And I would think that that's a second choice if you couldn't do the internal.
Yeah, absolutely. There's Chinese medicine. So people who do acupuncture, that can help with that. There's something called Maya abdominal massage that can be really, really helpful. There's so many different things that we have access to. And for people that There are some people who just the thought of going to an internal therapist is just, it's not for them. And it could be from trauma. It can be for many different reasons. Maybe there's nobody close to them. Maybe it's a financial barrier. So there's lots of reasons why maybe that the internal piece is not there. And, but there's lots of other people, and especially now in the fitness world where I am, part of what I one of my partners is a pelvic floor physiotherapist, and we created a course together to train fitness and movement professionals about how to assess within their scope and how to prescribe movement within our scope as fitness professionals. And there's now a huge number of people who are movement, so Pilates, yoga, fitness, all sorts of things, who have an awareness of the pelvic floor, who can also now help for people that don't have access to the physio. And we also promote a collaboration between the two. So if you do have access to a physio and they can handle the internal assessment and treatment, and then there's a collaborative approach, and then a movement professional that works in synergy with them, basically, then the movement is then supporting the work that the physio is doing as well. And so a lot can be done. And even I run a 28-day challenge that is an app-based program, and it's very financially available to pretty much everybody. And people have significant changes within a couple of weeks. And really when the awareness is there and people know how to do Kegels correctly, how to hold their body, they start to do them consistently, and then they start to add it in. I always say, do them correctly coordinated with movement and do it consistently. That's kind of my 3C approach.
Yeah.
And when you do that, people have great results, and their leaking stops. I had one woman, she's like, I've been wearing pads for 10 years and I don't have to wear them anymore. And
wow.
That's life-changing. So
yeah, that is.
Physio is amazing, but there's also a lot of other professionals out there who are the awareness and the education is really getting out. So there's a lot of amazing people you can get help from.
I know there was a woman that just came to my city. I don't know if she just came here or she's been here for a while, a couple of years maybe. And she has a year's waiting list because there's no one else that's really doing it. And it's just it's so powerful, the effects of it, that this woman's got a year's waiting list. So I think that kind of says a lot about it. What's the name of your program? So the listeners, if they're interested, they can go find it in the app store.
It's actually, I partnered with a company who they provide the app platform, and they allow fitness professionals to run challenges on their platform. So the app is called OBII, but you need to have a key, like a code word, pardon me, to access my specific challenge. And so if you go to vaginacoach.com and click on the 28-day challenge, there's one that starts on the first Tuesday of every month. So one just started 2 days ago. So you actually technically can still register for it now for one more day. But the first Tuesday of every month, you can go and join and have fun. It's a great community.
Well, I'll make sure that I actually air this then prior to your next one opening. How about that?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And how do you do one-on-one coaching as well?
I do. So I have sort of 3 approaches. So the challenge is usually a very common place for people to come in and kind of, people are thinking, what the hell does a vagina coach do?
Yeah.
So they want to learn. So that's usually an introduction to kind of my philosophies. And from there, if people want more, I have an online program called Kegel Mojo. And that's sort of a DIY where I give you tons of exercises and tons of release, like sort of stretch and down training activities, a ton of education videos, guest expert interviews, workouts. I include hypopressives in there as well, which is another really, really cool technique for incontinence and prolapse. And then for people who want more one-on-one, because some people, everybody has a unique story, and some people want a more personalized approach, then I do online coaching as well. And it usually is 4 sessions. So I don't have, my coaching doesn't involve kind of ongoing regular coaching. It's usually I give you the information, and then it's your responsibility to go and put it into practice.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. When I was looking on your Instagram profile the other day, I saw this post that you put, I think it said, do you want a buffy muffy?
A buff muff. Yeah.
A buff muff. And I loved it. And then I was talking to my sister today and I said, well, guess what I'm going to learn about today? And she's like, what? I'm like, I'm going to learn how to get a buff muff. And she's like, what? Really? She's like, I want a buff muff.
I'm going to start selling t-shirts, I think.
I think so. I thought, oh, that's so great that she has that. It's great because it's not spoken about enough. And I just think I had a client even just the other day who was so excited to tell me about period panties that she discovered.
Yeah.
Because she has incontinence and she wants
Yeah.
to use them not for her period because she's menopausal, but more so for the fact that she pees her pants. And she was thrilled. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to tell my clients about this. Period panties. How excellent.
Yeah, there's a lot of amazing products out there. And Nix Wear is actually a Canadian company that makes some underwear that helps with leaking and what have you. And my messaging on that is I love that those are available because I think that they're a way better option than pads. And
right.
But I also say that they ideally should only be a temporary need. So
right.
It's something that you're using while you're seeking help and therapy. There's a very, very small percentage of people that may need, for whatever reason, they might need something ongoing. But really, at the end of the day, leaking is not something we need to accept as normal. It's not something that we need to say, oh, well, it's just the way it is because I've had children or because I'm getting older. It's very, very treatable. And putting a pad in every day is you're just kind of masking a symptom. And there's a lot you could be doing that doesn't really take a whole heck of a lot of effort that can really change that.
Yeah.
So
you're band-aiding it or you're padding it, we'll call it.
Yeah, exactly. So it plays a role that we need them for certain situations and really ideally just a temporary short-term need.
And why is it that women get incontinence as they age?
Different scenarios. So just general, we are just that much older. So the muscles, there's more wear and tear, or maybe there's been more accidents in a year, or maybe it's a lot to do with posture and how you hold yourself. So there's a lot more sitting that happens. We become more sedentary as we age too, as women, especially once we reach perimenopause and menopause, there's a hormonal influence, and especially post-menopause, if symptoms have kind of been, maybe they haven't existed, or maybe they've just been minor and very easy to ignore or just kind of put aside, they can sometimes start to scream at you once you're postmenopausal. And a lot of it is the hormones. So we have a loss of estrogen, and that influences the walls of the vagina. It influences the support, the muscles, the bladder, all sorts of things. There's lots of women who have associated dryness and atrophy as well. So that all plays a role. It's really, really a big hormonal piece from an aging perspective. But if we recognize this, again, it's never too late. If we recognize this when we are pregnant or before we're pregnant, or even after, say, our first or second child, and then we start to live a more pelvic-centric lifestyle, then that doesn't need to be something that we expect is going to happen, or we're just kind of waiting, knowing that, oh, one day down the road, this is just going to be how it is. It'll really transform the future. And it definitely, we don't ever have to have it, really. Yeah.
I'm so happy that I get to share that information with people, because I think like I said, it's not talked about enough. We need to get it out there. There's way too many women. I think there's more women suffering from incontinence after children than there is not.
Oh, totally. And well, statistically, it says 1 in 3 women. I say that it's higher than that.
I say it's higher too.
Yeah. And prolapse is, the statistics are 50% of women have some degree of prolapse. And I would say it's at least that, if not a little bit more than that as well. So it's very, very common, but my big thing is it's not something that you need to accept. And there's so many options for help. And especially the other side of that is the movement piece. So when people have leaking, they may not pursue certain types of activity anymore because they don't want to leak or because they don't want to make it worse. And then same thing with prolapse. And I would say it's especially that with prolapse, women stop the activities that are really getting their heart rate up. So maybe they don't jump anymore. Maybe they don't lift weights anymore. And a lot of people are told when they do have prolapse that they can't lift. And I disagree with that. But then they say, well, I can't lift anymore. So then now, from a bone density perspective, they aren't really going out and loading their joints anymore because they're not moving as much. And now they're also not loading their joints from weightlifting, which is really beneficial. So as we hit menopause again, then the muscles are have adapted to a sedentary life. They don't really have a lot of tone and function. The bone, from an osteoporosis perspective, you know what I mean? It's just like this kind of this
compounding.
big, yes, exactly. So, so seek help soon now and stay on top of it.
Yeah, it's never too late, ladies. So that's vaginacoach.com. Thank you, Kim. I think that's great. And I love what you're doing. So keep doing it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me, and thanks for helping get the word out.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. New episodes come out every Thursday, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of them. You can also find me at KarenMartel.com, and you can get free recipes and weight loss tips by following me on Instagram and Facebook at Karen Martel Nutrition.